I'm Tiffany and this is Towering TBR. I mentioned before that I have been a viewer of BookTube for several years now, and I wanted to highlight some of the best books I read because of the hype, or at least the introduction of them through BookTube. So back in 2016, 2017, The Martian was everywhere on BookTube, and I had actually not read very much sci-fi at this point, but I picked it up due to the hype and found out I loved it. And not only did I love this book, I then went on to read Project Hail Mary by the same author, and it was amazing. This is a story about a man who gets stranded on Mars. His team evacuates and they think he is perishing in the storm, so he survives. And I'm sure you've heard of it. There's also a movie adaptation of it as well, but one of the best reads I picked up due to BookTube. Confessions by Kanae Minato is a seriously messed up thriller. It starts with the premise that a middle school teacher is resigning. It's the last day of school, and her daughter has died on school property, and she says, "I know one of you students was responsible for it." And there's a lot of psychological manipulation, and there are so many twists and turns. Like, it almost gave me whiplash, but it was such a compelling story. I read it in just one day. So I would definitely recommend this if you're wanting a really messed up thriller. Then something that's really out of my comfort zone is the manga series My Brother's Husband by Gengaro Tagame. This is just a duology of this Japanese man. His twin brother has moved to Canada and is gay and marries his male partner, and then the Japanese man dies, and his brother-in-law comes to Japan to meet the estranged twin and his daughter, and it just talks about the everyday homophobia that's quite present in Japan, and how repeated gentle interactions with this man really changed their opinion about homosexuality and how they treat people who are homosexuals. It's one of the most uplifting stories I've ever read, and the fact that it's a beautiful color manga just makes it even better. Switching to a children's series, The Trials of Morrigan Crow is a book by Jessica Townsend. It's a fantasy series. The fourth one is coming out, I think, the end of this year. It's about Morrigan Crow. She's a cursed child. Everything that goes wrong, they blame on her. And she knows that she's gonna die. And before she can, like just before she can, she's whisked away to a magical world and entered into a magical tournament in order to earn her place there. And it is so full of fun and whimsy, and wow, I can't wait to keep going on this. So good. And I think I heard about this mostly from Mercedes over at Mercy's Bookish Musings, but it definitely hit big with other booktubers as well. I heard about Jenny Lawson. I first heard about her second book, Furiously Happy, and started with this one. She writes nonfiction, somewhat autobiographical essays that are hilarious. She deals with a lot of mental health issues and as well as physical health issues, and some of the ways that she writes her encounters are just, they're a dark humor, but they are just great. This is actually my favorite of her three, but I have read her other two. You don't have to read them in any particular order, but I am so glad I read this because she is now a favorite author of mine. I heard for so long about The Bear and the Nightingale before I picked it up. It's a winter Russia fantastical world with old gods and new, and honestly that didn't sound like anything I would really like, but everybody insisted. The writing is beautiful, the descriptions of the different creatures just makes this really an interesting world. And so I picked it up and I finished the trilogy quite quickly, actually. I just had to know what was going to happen. It's not a really quick-paced book, though. It is slow and probably best read in winter months. Just whenever you're wanting kind of a sweet, cozy, fantastical story. On the complete opposite of that spectrum, I heard about Saga, which is a graphic novel series that's science fiction. It has kind of a Romeo and Juliet story. They're two different species that create a child, and that child is then hunted because neither side wants basically a half-breed, and so they're kind of on the run. And there's other stories within the galaxy that follow it. It's some very strange stuff, and it's incredibly graphic. So just because it's got bright colors doesn't mean it's for kiddos. But yeah, I'm actually behind in this series. They took a 3-year hiatus on creating comics, and yes, I want to do a reread so that I can read the new material with as full of understanding as possible. So gotta get on that soon. I hesitated to put The House for the Cerulean Sea just because I feel like I read it really before it got big on BookTube, but I definitely heard about it through BookTube, and while it's getting all the praise, I am grateful that I read TJ Klune because I've started to pick up his other books, and he's become a new favorite writer for me. So House in the Cerulean Sea is about Linus. He's 40 years old, and he works in kind of social services for magical children. So he goes to inspect an orphanage with 6 magical children that are considered extremely dangerous. And he meets the caretaker, and he meets the children, and this book is fun, it's hilarious, it's full of whimsy, it's a really good feel-good book, and I'm glad I picked it up. Down to our last 2. So I picked up Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell because of BookTube. I saw a lot of British booktubers pick it up because it started being longlisted for prizes, and when people said it was about Shakespeare, I was like, nah, not interested, don't like Shakespeare. And so I feel like that did it a disservice. It's not exactly about Shakespeare. It's about him and his wife and his children and what they go through in losing their child to the bubonic plague. Shakespeare is never actually mentioned by name. It's just through inferences that you understand that this is about his family. This is based on a true story. Shakespeare did lose his son Hamnet to the bubonic plague, and then wrote Hamlet as a response to his grief. The writing is exquisite. I wish I would have picked out passages because it's so great, but it's also introduced me to Maggie O'Farrell. I have now picked up 4 more of her books and cannot wait to read more because her writing style just blew me away. And lastly, I saved my favorite book that I heard of through BookTube for last, A Long Way to the Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I'm sure you've heard a lot about this, but it is a science fiction found family story. They're on a long haul throughout space, going to punch a wormhole at the end of the universe, and so it's kind of a road trip story. You kind of get to know the crew, and it's an alien and human crew, and so you get to learn about the alien races. They stop off at planets and pit stops and you get to learn even more world building of the creatures and their home worlds. And I love rereading this because it's just so uplifting and comforting, and these people feel like friends, not just the people, the aliens too. And I think this is probably the best book that I read because of BookTube, and I am so glad. And if you haven't gotten to it yet, I urge you to pick it up. It is amazing. So those are the 10 books that I read because of BookTube. I hope if you hadn't heard of any of these that you're encouraged to pick some up. But if you've been wondering if maybe there was too much hype, I'm hoping I had my voice to say, nope, this is the right amount of hype. You should read this. Alright, thanks for joining me. In the comments right down below, any BookTube suggestions that you've really loved. Thanks. Bye.